Uh, the what we call the pit count is a literal count of all the people experiencing homelessness in the community on a single night, i.e., why it's called the point in time count. And this is a HUD mandate, a Department of Housing and Urban Development mandate. All COCs across the nation have to participate in this. It has to be in the last week of January. The COC gets to pick what day it is, but it has to be. The federal government says it has to be the last week of January. It's conducted in every community, like I said, nationwide, last 10 days in January, and it's supposed to be a snapshot of homelessness on this one night in our community. Um, why does the pick count take place during the last 10 days? It's supposed to be to make it so that the same time frame for every community ensures consistency across the U.S. The same time frame year after year ensures the trends are monitored appropriately. A set for a night in winter because then each COC is likely to maximize its resources to serve people's needs. A little bit on that. We are not required to, we're just required to go out and count people. But what our continuum of care does, COC does, is we provide resources. So we provide food, we provide survival kits. We've been making survival kits. And one of the biggest things we provide is coats because it is during the winter. And the end of the month ensures that people who can only pay for temporary housing for part of the month are generally included in the count. So the point of it being in the last 10 days of January is to maximize the amount of people we can see outside. Why do we do the pick count? It's to measure and monitor trends and changes in homelessness on a local and national level. I'm sure you guys all either went to college or you're all politically savvy, so you know when the federal government releases a study or releases a trend that says like, oh, homelessness has increased by this amount since this year, blah blah blah. This is where they get that data. Um, it's also to help our community understand what resources we need and strategize the best ways to use them to end homelessness. Right. So last year, when I participated in the pit count, one of the things that a lot of our teams saw is that there was a lot of people who were new to homelessness. It wasn't necessarily people who were chronically homeless. It was generally someone who just got priced out of their apartment, their landlord raised their rents, and they're living in their car. It wasn't the typical like, somebody, is out living in the woods just yet. It was people who were more new to homelessness. And that's one of the things that we saw last year. And so that way we could use that information to strategize the best ways to end homelessness. And that's why this year we were working a lot with trying to raise awareness for that and trying to help people manage evictions and try to make sure people don't get evicted. You guys were doing a lot of that too when it comes to fighting for I forget what the bill was called, but it was to strengthen tenants' rights and to not have as many unneeded evictions. We also do this to comply with federal regulations and requirements, but that's not fun. Why is the pick count so important? This report can be used to show general changes in homelessness numbers year over year, can identify trends within who is experiencing homelessness, why people are experiencing homelessness, and for how long. Demographic data allows for further local efforts to reduce any disparities within the homeless response system. The pick count not only highlights the challenges faced by the homeless population, but it also engages the community in addressing these pressing social issues. Who is counted? Um, the the Department of Housing and Urban Development defines homelessness for the purposes of the pit count. So we can't use our own definition for who is homeless. We have to use the federal government's definition. People who are unsheltered. These are individuals or families whose primary nighttime residence is a public place not meant for human habitation. Those experiencing unsheltered homelessness are counted through various methodologies such as canvassing, sampling, and service based counts at volunteer host sites. And sheltered individuals are individuals or families residing in a place dedicated for serving people who would otherwise be unsheltered. So we pull a data report from what we call, well, not what we call, what is called the HMIS system, the Homeless Management Information System. And what this does, and we work with DV shelters who have to manually report to us. They're like shelter rosters for identifying any information. So the two types of people counted are people who are unsheltered and people who are living in shelters or DV shelters. So that way, everybody who is technically homeless can be counted. Who is not counted. People who have already been surveyed on the day. That we have to do a lot of deduplication. You know, we send a lot of teams out there. Sometimes people get surveyed twice. We have to go through and like deduplicate. People temporarily staying with family or friends, doubled up, or couch surfing. That, like I said before, a lot of the people that we saw that were new to homelessness, they, if they weren't living in their cars, maybe they were sleeping on a friend's couch, or or something like that, or staying with friends or family. Unfortunately, those people can't be counted because they don't meet the federal definition of homelessness. I consider them homeless because they are not paying for their own rent, but I'm not the federal government. People self-paying for motel rooms, someone residing in a hospital, rehab, or jail, or other institutional setting, someone actively fleeing domestic violence but not living on the street or in a shelter, and people living in boarding homes, and people living in permanent housing programs that have homeless eligibility. Let's say somebody was in a shelter, they got into a program, and eventually that program found them a permanent housing program. They are no longer homeless, so we cannot count them, even though they once were. Like I said before, the sheltered versus unsheltered pit count. Sheltered includes emergency shelters, including those using a hotel or motel voucher. Transitional housing. Those of you in Nassau know a lot more about the using hotel or motel because you guys don't really have shelters out there. Mostly everyone's in motels. People in transitional housing, VA shelters, DV shelters, and youth/parenting youth shelters. And the unsheltered pit count, we look at wooded areas, parks, train stations, bus stations, living in vehicles, abandoned buildings, homes. Um, what we did this year is we set up a QR code that we called the "See Someone Save Someone" QR code, and we put it out into the community. So a lot of the locations that we got that were going out into to canvas for the pit this year were people in the community seeing someone who is unhoused, who they know is unhoused, who they scan the QR code, give us a brief description of what they look like, the general location of where they are, and then we've already sent out outreach teams to go, give resources to that person to try to bring them inside. But now we have that location, so if they're still there, we could use that location. The For last year's national report, we found that there's a lot of information, but 2024 was the highest recorded single night in the last couple of years. About 23 out of every 10,000 people in the United States were experiencing some type of homelessness, whether that be they are living in emergency shelters, in transitional housing programs, or in an unsheltered location. You see, this is no, you guys are no stranger to these key factors. You all know this probably, but the affordability crisis, affordable housing crisis, rising inflation, stagnating wages among lower class and middle income households, and the persistent effects of systemic racism have stretched homeless service systems to their limit. You all know this, but this is part of why we do the pit. So that way, when we go out there and we ask people, it's like, what kind of led you to this point in your life? Why are you out here? These are some of the things that people say caused their homelessness to begin with. You know, it did we you again you all probably know this, but the stereotype of, oh, somebody is a drug addict and that's why they're homeless, that tends not to be the truth. Usually what happens is somebody is a working person. Sometimes while they're homeless they're still working, they get kicked out of their housing for whatever reason, and then sometimes self-medication comes after that. But these are the key factors that we've seen. If you hear jingling and walk around, that's my dog. I apologize for that. um, For the most recent PIT data for Long Island specifically, about 209 people were surveyed and confirmed to be living on the street. And a total of 4,002 people were reported. So that's people living in shelters and transitional housing and on the street. Our CRC projects the number of total people residing on the street across Nassau and Suffolk closer to about 400 people at any given time. Um, Total pit numbers were close to overall local numbers pre-pandemic, and Long Island did not experience a drastic increase that other communities did, but pit totals were more realistically of our homeless response system within long-standing eviction bans and increased funding for homeless programs that were earmarked to mitigate COVID-19. Those programs no longer existed for whatever reason. The eviction bans were stopped, leading to an increase in homelessness. Go figure. Um, this is just an overall review of PIT data. We have about 6,267 households, and 10,324 people experiencing some type of that interacted with the homeless response system in some way. About And people spend typically about 251 days homeless. About 30% of those people exit homelessness, and 7% return to homelessness. If you want to find more information about that, that's on our website, lihomeless.org. And if you would like to volunteer at the pit, registration closes this Friday, the 16th. You could sign up via the QR code. Joe also put up the QR code in his PowerPoint. But what to expect when signing up? You choose your location for the day of. The way that it's going to work is when you sign up, you pick a location. Let's say you live in Amityville, right? Or let's say you live in Brentwood. It's a little bit better. You live in Brentwood. You pick the Amityville location, so that way that you go to the Amityville location the day of. And we have multiple locations across Long Island, so that way nobody has to drive too far. On the day of, you go to the location you chose. You participate in in the morning training that we have made for you. You'll pick up your materials. Like I said, you will pick up survival kits, coats, food, some sleeping bags we have, and then you will go out with your team. You'll meet up with your team leader, and you'll go out with your team. All team leaders will be Long Island Coalition for the Homeless staff. So, if you've never done a pit count before, you don't have to worry. You will have an experienced person as your team lead, and they will sort of run you through how it works. Plus, the training we do is pretty comprehensive. And if you'd like to stay involved with our continuum of care, we have our COC business meetings. Joe recently was at one. He presented a little bit. That's the business meetings is just everyone who has a vested interest in ending homelessness on Long Island comes to the business meetings. We talk about strategies. We talk about what's going on. We have multiple committees that you could be a part of. The main one that we generally try to push to the general public is our legislative committee. Our legislative committee for the last few years has been working diligently on producing a homeless bill of rights for Long Island. I believe it was Connecticut passed a homeless bill of rights, and I think New York City has a homeless bill of rights too. But so we're working on adopting that here on Long Island. With the legislative committee works to do advocacy advocacy opportunities, do power mapping and whatnot. One thing that the legislative committee is going to be working on this year that I'm spearheading is our community ambassador program. So that is a program where we get people who experience homelessness or just general members of the community to come. We provide them with training, and we provide them with information and data advocacy training, so that way they can go out and do advocacy in the real world, in the streets, whether it be among peers, whether it be among neighbors, whether it be among elected officials, going to town halls, so that you have the best training and the best information possible when it comes to advocating for our unhoused neighbors. And then the COC also provides a lot of trainings and networking events. One trading that we recently did was a Narcan trading. I think everyone should be certified in using Narcan, especially if you're going out into the streets and interacting with the public. A lot of people self-medicating out there. Narcan's important. But if you want to be a part of what we have going on, and you want to learn more, and you want to join some of these committees, join the business meetings, get access to the trainings and networking events, you can send the QR code and become an official member of our continuum of care. And hang out on our website, and you'll learn more about what we have going on. 2026 is going to be a big year for us, so I would like as many people who are interested in doing political advocacy and trying to better the world around them to be a part of what we have going on.